Once I help them understand what consciousness is, once they feel my passion and in a sense my aggression, they know I'm not some tree-hugging hippie wearing loose-fitting white clothing and mala beads and it has to do with spirituality. I'm basically looking at a CEO in a medical profession and saying, you don't know consciousness, you don't know me. But what we can do is we're going to expand your awareness. We're going to expand how you see things. It's going to help you tactically. It's going to help you strategically. And maybe that individual's wandering around the hospital just bringing up the level of consciousness of every employee. You're worried about burnout. You're worried about retention. Well, we've never had more books, more coaches, more consultants trying to work on burnout, trying to work on retention. Oh, yeah. And it's never been worse. We have 10,000 books on happiness. We've never been unhappy. So, Mr. CEO, I'm giving you all these straight facts. Forget about consciousness. Forget about thinking what you think it is. Those facts alone to an individual who's expanded and can see the whole picture and can help the CEO remove his own bias, conditioning, and his own blind spots, that is priceless to a man or woman at that level. Priceless. It does not matter the industry. It does not matter if they're open or closed-minded.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and turn them into cash-based multimillionaire entrepreneurs. Warning, if you're a doctor who listens to this podcast regularly, you will make millions of dollars. Do not listen to this podcast unless you want to be a successful clinic owner who helps thousands of patients achieve their health goals and adds more money than you can imagine to your bank account. You've been warned.
Welcome to Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and we turn them into super clinic owners. I'm one of your hosts, Jennifer Gligoric. I'm so excited to have you today, and I'm excited to bring something new to you, very cutting edge. Our guest has over 2 decades as a business owner, 7 years in nonprofit as the president of the Pay It Forward Foundation, and he's revolutionized corporate C-suite structures by bringing the position of Chief Consciousness Officer to the forefront of the business world. So let us give a big Super Clinic welcome to Charley Johnson as he enlightens us on the future of business tactical decision making. Welcome to the show, Charley. How are you doing?
Beautiful. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you here and to talk about this because we need this in the world of business right now. And I know all of our healthcare CEOs and clinic owners that we have are looking for more ways to bring what I talk about, ethical entrepreneurship, which is also better consciousness into everything we're doing in business. Yes. So tell me a little bit about, number one, why would a company hire a chief consciousness officer and what are they actually doing? Because it's about tactics. It's not.
So this is going to be a different conversation than I assume that most of your podcasts have been. Just like every conversation that I've had with the 60 I've done in the last month, this is really taking off. The one thing that caught my attention immediately when you said ethical entrepreneurship, right? Most people's minds just go to, okay, I understand what that means. I'm a good person. I hold the door open. I want to treat my employees correctly. But what's ethical to a Republican is not ethical to a Democrat. What's ethical to a Catholic is not ethical to an atheist. Now, this is just going one step deeper, right? That's all this is. Since the beginning of humanity, and I hear this continuously, and I know no one's lying. I know they're telling the truth. They love their kids. They enjoy their business. They want to take care of their employees. They want to do what's right by their patients. They want to do what's right by their clinic. Everyone says that. Everyone says that.
Yeah.
But as soon as they're pushed into a corner, we come out swinging. Since the beginning of humanity, we have chosen sides, right? Here in Utah.
Yes, we have.
Here in Utah, it's very religious. It's very Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
In Texas, it's Baptist. In the Middle East, it's Muslim. It just changes. Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, everything, right? The ethics are coming from consciousness. Everything is birthed from consciousness. As we go and start to understand what consciousness is, again, a unique conversation, everyone here is their consciousness is limited with their perception. As they start to understand what that is, it expands awareness. When we expand, when we know better, we do better. When that happens, less division and conflict occurs. When that happens, people are more open to the ethics of the other side, not thinking the other side's ruining the world because the other side thinks you're ruining the world, right? This is a totally different conversation, but it needs to be brought to the awareness
Oh my God, this would change. This will change so much because we're
Everything.
so divided right now on, I mean, and it's being propagated by our media and by politicians. It's not just, well, let's agree to disagree, because I understand that your frame of view is your frame of view and mine is mine, and we have different needs and wants.
Mm-hmm.
That has seemingly went out the window if you
Yes.
only stay online, not
Yes.
when you actually speak to other people. The real world is different than the online world, but still it's really changed. And I am allowed to be a bad person because I'm so in the right, so I have a moral authority to do something heinous or say things that would never have been tolerated
Yes.
just 10 years ago. So
Yes.
so this is a way to change that perspective, to open it up. And how do we start doing this?
Well, we go by hiring this position. That's why pioneering
Mm-hmm.
this position. That's why we're so aggressive about this. That's why we're talking about this discussion and just taking people one step lower, one step deeper, right? To
Yeah.
the healthcare, to the clinic owners, to the doctors, to the practitioners, to the CEOs of a big hospital. Imagine having someone on staff who's neutral.
That's just
That's
that's
the end of
crazy
that's the end of the
speak.
discussion. That literally just end it right there, right?
Yeah.
We have always chosen sides. And to my question to everyone I ask, do you know someone neutral?
Hmm. No, I really
No,
don't.
you
I know
don't.
I love and know people on totally different sides, but I can't say I know anyone truly neutral. No.
Cool. So this is a unique thing. This is the first time humanity has access to people who are neutral because of the way they brought up. Maybe they had some spiritual teaching. Maybe they just were raised like I was, where we didn't have parents that forced us down one way or the other, right? But the
Mhm.
thing that's occurring right now is in a time of more division and conflict than ever before.
That's a bold statement, really, when you think about it.
How else? How else are we coming out of this? Because the media, the politicians, we always point our finger outward and say they're malicious. They're just doing what they think is right. Their side needs to be louder than the other side because at some point in the future of humanity, we truly believe our side's going to win, the other side's going to be okay losing, and we're just going to go off into this utopic future. We've done this since the beginning of humanity.
Or we'll just eradicate them.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really what's going to happen? No,
No.
no, it's not. So neutrality is another word that's coming up time and time again because consciousness is fundamental to our reality. Consciousness birthed Republicans and Democrats. Consciousness birthed Catholics and atheists. Consciousness birthed every religion, every politician, every thought, every idea, every theory, everything that you think the other side's doing, you're doing the same. Everything came from consciousness. The neutrality of consciousness, having someone on staff to take a CEO from here to here, to take a customer service agent from here to here, to take a doctor, a clinician, anyone that's listening to this from here to here. Forget what you think consciousness is because it's not spiritual. This is not a spiritual thing. This is not sitting in the Himalayas. This is not meditation. This is not a wellness program where people asked you to meditate and you thought it was Buddhist and you were turned off by it. Consciousness is everything fundamental to our reality, physical and non-physical. This allows every clinician, every doctor, every employee, every patient to understand that's who they are. When they understand that, they have access to that vast resource, which takes them from here to here. The main point of this is
For
everyone.
those of you who are listening, he's putting his hands up next to his
Oh
eyes
yeah,
like
forgot about
blinders,
that.
and then he's opening his hands up to being a wider field of vision when he says
We're,
from here to here. So yeah.
we're expanding awareness. That's
Yeah.
all we're doing. And this awareness of this topic simply takes a third grader into fourth or fifth. And that's all we can do. That's the best thing we can do for humanity.
Well, then, okay. So, but we are all creatures of, but we believe it. We are, for the people who like truly believe, but I'm right. There's no other, I'm right. Right.
Yep.
That is now this thing, right? Instead of going, I remember growing up where it was more like people would say, none of us know what we're really doing. We're all just hurtling on this rock through space trying to like stay focused. And now you get people who are like, I'm right. And you're just like, how can you even think that when there's just so much, like I kind of don't get that. But how do you go through that. And I love the fact that this is very tactical and it doesn't have to quote unquote mess with someone's deep-seated spiritual need. It's just a way of saying, well, yeah, you can feel that way and you can feel that way, but you just have to look at it different. Is that how you're doing it? I mean, how do you do it? Like, where's, if you, let's say you get hired and they're like, well, how am I not being fair? How do you think I'm not neutral? Where do you start is what I'm saying, because everything's so.
Just a different approach. The question is, what's better, heads or tails of the coin?
Well, it depends on what we're betting on and what I want.
See, but that's how the mind breaks it down, right? To that question, logically, they're the same, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Catholic, atheist, heads or tails. Republican, Democrat, heads or tails. Just bringing awareness, asking different questions, making them expand their awareness, talking about this in a different way, bringing to the forefront something they have access to, such as a question like that just rewires the mind, makes them shift and expand their awareness. Simple things like that. It's like the 4-minute mile. It was impossible. No one could do it. Someone ran it. Everyone could do it. That's all this is. Everything we've done in the past, every podcast, someone you've had on, they're going to talk directly to the clinicians. They're going to talk directly to the CEO of the hospital. It's going to be very specific to the hospital, to healthcare, to the clinics, to this, to whatever. We always do that. If this was a real estate podcast, we talk real estate. Right. If any other thing, a sports broadcast, a political podcast, we talk very specific to that topic. If you're a Republican, you watch Fox News. If you're Democrat, you watch CNN. We're continuously staying in our lane. All of those lanes came from consciousness. All we're trying to do is bring to the awareness where everything came from, like the heads and tails of the coin. Where'd the coin, the real question is not what's better. Where'd the coin come from? Where did your ideals and beliefs come from? Where did your ethics come from? Why do you think the other person that you don't agree with is wrong and you're right? Just that question changes everything. Just that question makes the 4-minute mile go from impossible to possible. We need to bring, because the center of humanity, mark my words, will be consciousness. And it's becoming more approached right now. It always has been the center of humanity because that's all we are. But now everyone's becoming aware of it. And as we become aware of it, we're going to want to understand it. There's going to be a lot of unknowns. So as humans, when what's unknown, what do? We fear it. When we fear it, like you said 10 years ago, to each their own is fine. When we fear something, we dig in, we double down. We want to get into our beliefs, and we really, because of that fear, and we start to doubt things, we just double down on our beliefs, on our political views, on everything. That's what you see right now. That's why there's so much division and conflict, which is a perfectly natural thing. But if there's someone out there bringing awareness to where all of these fears came from, where your beliefs came from, where your side that you think is correct came from, you start to ask the heads and tails of the question, it just starts to plant a seed. And you and I know the universe is a hell of a gardener. It'll make it grow.
Yeah. It reminds me of the book, Who Moved My Cheese, right? When the mouse goes, well, what would I do if I was not afraid? Because a lot of our, decision makings, even in business, are based out of fear. They're not based out of data. We're not tracking our numbers. We haven't looked at our bank account just to know that the things are paid. We really stay a lot in fear-based as business owners. Even huge companies do this as well, right? Mm-hmm. So when we can get out of fear and to be in a more neutral thing, that's why I love numbers so much, is the numbers tell you a very good story. They tell you, how your clients are reacting to what you're doing, and when you look at the numbers, it also tells you how to lead the people to where you need to be. So would you say that as a chief consciousness officer, you do look at the numbers and dashboards? How do you get to where you can make actual institutional change so that sort of consciousness is driving, that tactical consciousness is driving the decision-making?
This position reports to the CEO and has no authority over any other position in the company. This position becomes a secret weapon. And when you're talking about numbers, okay, let's work with the CFO. Let's expand their awareness. Let's talk to marketing. Let's expand their awareness. Let's talk to HR and have them hire different caliber individuals. Let's talk to the CEO when he is limited in his perception. And for those listening and aren't watching, their perception's right here. He could be Harvard grad, 170 IQ, but he's got the blinders on. It doesn't matter. When you expand that, there's going to be better strategy. There's going to be better tactics. There's going to be different answers and solutions to whatever his problem is, because there's always going to be problems because humans are involved. Let's expand the awareness of customer service. Let's expand the awareness of your nurses. The main thing here is there's different levels of clarity on this planet. Most of the vast majority of the planet is in fourth grade. When you expand your awareness, you take them from fourth to fifth, maybe sixth grade. As a CEO, very tactically, would you rather have sixth graders as your employees or fourth grade? You'd rather have sixth graders. They understand education better. They're more self-sufficient, better communicators. They understand life. They can do things. That's all we're doing. So when this position really starts, when people start to really understand this and they take their bias and their conditioning and what they think consciousness is and what they think I'm trying to do, which I'm not going to walk in and tell everyone to meditate, make their problems go away. I have not said that, and I won't. This is a tactical understanding of what and who you are that you will become aware of as the shift on this planet continues to speed up. This is a secret weapon for every C-suite executive because it's going to expand their awareness to see better and different solutions when they could be on a plateau. They could be stuck. They could not have new ideas coming up because Einstein said, the same mind that creates a problem cannot solve it. You have got to expand your awareness or you're going to use the same tool that created the first problem in the first place to solve it. And that's why we're in so much chaos right now. We don't have the solutions.
So give me a for instance of how this would work in a regular company, or how this has worked in the past where you have come in, and I know you can't give us all the particulars, but like what was the challenge that bringing in this consciousness officer was able to fix? Can you give me a for instance or an example of that?
Well, if it comes to the companies I've worked with, let's go with marketing.
Okay.
They need new ways. They want to be different than their competition. They want new ways for their customers to see them in the light they want them to see them, right? If they've got the blinders on, you expand their awareness. They see new ways to market. HR is having a problem with retention. It's because they keep hiring the same people. It's because the people they're interviewing, they've got an expectation and a very limited perception of who the people across the desk need to be, what they need to be in the interview, and what they're looking for. Someone like me comes in and says, I know that individual didn't really get you excited, but their level of clarity and the way they answered your questions is perfect for the division you want them to be in, right? Expanding their perception. When you have a vast level of clarity and vast level of consciousness, you are literally seeing the whole picture. You are not an HR manager who is Republican, and because the person across the desk from you is Democrat, and I know we don't talk about that, but everyone knows where everyone stands, you're immediately alienated by hiring that person just because they don't view what you view. They don't believe what you believe. I know that sounds childish, and I know anyone listening would never admit that in public that they do that. Bullshit, they do. Everyone does that.
There's whole lawsuits about that happening in companies, the making of such toxic work environments for anyone who doesn't drink their particular brand of Kool-Aid, whichever it is.
Yep.
You know, in fact, we had another doctor on the show who built a new way just to find clinical people, because particularly doctors have a hard time with hiring. That's not one of the skills they give them in medical school. It's knowing if someone's going to die and how to fix that. And so they don't use resumes. They only use resumes to get people who might possibly be interested, but the rest of the process takes around 15 minutes and for the actual seeker, and they use a completely different process than resumes. And so they're submitting people that normally that clinic would never even look at. Sometimes they may have a degree, sometimes they might have worked in something completely different. But what they're actually looking for is if that person can do that actual job, and they'll be excited to do that job. They are interested, and it's the skill set and their personality around it. And so they've developed a different type of screening for that only takes a couple minutes, where they're actually honoring the person applying by not making them retype an entire resume and, do a Myers-Briggs, do a DISC. Those things drive me nuts. I automatically know, when I was a job seeker, well, this company doesn't have it together. If I'm going to have to do 10 different tests for something before I even get there. Right. And, but if you're pigeonholed, that's the way you did it because that is the system. rather than to expand. So you'd have to have a very open CEO to be able to do this. So what types of people or personality traits have you worked with that have had the best results in their companies?
So I hear that all the time, right? This
Yeah.
needs to be Silicon Valley. It needs to be a very open-minded CEO. No, it doesn't. Once I talk to them, once I help them understand what consciousness is, once they feel my passion and, in a sense, my aggression, they know I'm not some tree hugging hippie wearing loose fitting white clothing and mala beads, and it has to do with spirituality.
Ah,
I'm basically looking at a CEO in a medical profession and saying, you don't know consciousness, you don't know me. But what we can do is we're going to expand your awareness. We're going to expand how you see things. It's going to help you tactically. It's going to help you strategically. And maybe that individual's wandering around the hospital, just bringing up the level of consciousness of every employee. You're worried about burnout. You're worried about retention. Well, we've never had more books, more coaches, more consultants trying to work on burnout, trying to work on retention,
oh
and
yeah.
it's never been worse. We have 10,000 books on happiness. We've never been unhappy. So, Mr. CEO, I'm giving you all these straight facts. Forget about consciousness. Forget about thinking what you think it is. Those facts alone, to an individual who's expanded and can see the whole picture and can help the CEO remove his own bias, conditioning, and his own blind spots, that is priceless to a man or woman at that level. Priceless. It
Yeah.
does not matter the industry. It does not matter if they're open or closed minded. When
I
it's
do see a
talking,
lot of tree hugging hippies with their beads, taking their beads and throwing them down, going, "You don't know me," because we don't know. They could be very conscious people, right?
no, no, no,
They
no, no,
just
no.
happen to
They
like the
are.
beads.
No, 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 no. They are very conscious, but they are on the heads and tails of the coin. This position needs to understand business, needs to understand
Right.
spirituality, but needs to bridge the gap, right? Because a
Mm.
lot of wellness programs have come into this world and we've never been more divided and conflicted
Or unhealthy.
or unhealthy. So I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
we're
not
suffering for
saying,
so many chronic diseases and everything else. It does seem overwhelming, especially if, but you're saying that once they expand to a very net neutral sort of mind frame, how long does it usually take? Let's say your typical client, how long does it typically take from them to go where they're one side of the coin to where at least they can acknowledge both sides and see the full landscape?
not long at all. Just like with a conversation like this, maybe it's a couple weeks, maybe it's a 4 week program. This position does not change a Catholic or an atheist ideals. It does not change a Republican to a Democrat. It just opens their mind to understanding both sides of the story, just subtly, right? And the main point is to remove a little bit of division and conflict. That's all. That's all we can really do on this planet. We're not taking everyone to the top of the mountain. That's not possible, nor do we want that to happen. We're just subtly expanding everyone's awareness in business, outside of business, with your kids, with your spouse, no matter who you are or what you are.
Yeah. And so, what are the benchmarks someone would look at if they were trying to find a chief consciousness officer? Like everybody, if you're marketing or if you're in HR, there are certain numbers, like I was able to improve retention by this percent, or I was able to do this by this percent. And for a chief consciousness officer, what are the benchmarks they give for what they're doing? Like, how would you vet one? How would you know, since this is so new, that you're getting someone that actually knows what they're talking about, or you're just getting someone who's just a bunch of hot air? Like, what are the right questions to ask?
Well, and that's why I'm so busy right now. So I have quite a few businesses asking me those same questions. They're kind of running things through me to see how is this individual within our organization already, our chief people officer or one of our HR people, could they step into this position? We're having a lot of discussions. I'm also training individuals who think this is their dream role to help them understand really what the position is, but also what the position is not, right?
Mm.
This is brand new. We're also creating a program. I think you've seen the ads on LinkedIn for the Chicago University where they're creating chief AI officers because it's so brand new.
Yeah.
But we're doing the same thing with a chief consciousness officer. It's going to be a 10 to 12-month program to really start to help people understand where their bias and conditioning it is to help them be more neutral. So if I'm a company and I see this and I'm not completely turned off by it and I want to know, talk to me. Talk to me, right? Because we're going to start talking about the details of what the position is, what it's not. Do you have someone internally that may already be there that could just shift into this position? And then they could come work with me for 4 weeks or 8 weeks just to better understand how they would approach this position. Because there's a lot of HR individuals that I've crossed paths with that think it's kind of the same. It's not. There's a lot of chief people officers that cross my path that think it's the same. It's not. Maybe a chief happiness officer or a chief mindful officer. Those are all very specific things. Consciousness is everything. It includes the people officer, the HR, the CEO, the wellness officer, the marketing, the sales. Everything is consciousness. This position is one of the most unique things humanity will ever experience because of the shift on this planet. They will be someone, when the company understands what this position can do, man or woman, there will not be enough time in the day for them to take care of everyone who wants access to their time. Because it's like a chat GPT in human form. It's just
So
okay.
I think it'd be very difficult, having worked in HR and worked in strategic HR at the C-suite, I think it would be very difficult to lift anyone up into that role when you have to be expansive and also be only, everyone, you're trying to help everyone, but at the same time, you only work with the CEO. So I can see there being some innate friction to that, because everybody's going to want, if they were HR, they're going to consider them HR, right? They're going to consider them as the person that protects the company and really doesn't have my best interest at heart. And is just, they're just trying to dot I's and cross T's to avoid lawsuits, and that's a very hard, I guess, stereotype.
Yes, it is.
For an HR person to get over, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's very difficult because I worked in HR strategy and acquisition and talent, and it was having to get through that to get to that greater good for the thing, especially if there is a bias against the CEO. The CEO has to walk the walk and talk the talk. If they don't, it doesn't matter how great you could hire someone who is a literal warlock who could do magic and open up portals and change things. But if the CEO was being unethical, very biased and everything else, and just saying, okay, and not really, had buy-in, nothing is going to happen. No. Right? Because that's the captain of the ship.
Yep.
So that I think that is going to be the biggest thing, is getting buy-in from the CEO, because that's their baby. That's their genius that created it. And that role would have to be a powerful role within that organization.
Well, and that's where the power comes in, because they're not threatened or defending themselves in any position. So this is a specific podcast specifically to clinics.
Right. This is very, right? Very specific, but yeah.
No,
it is, but I can't help but think of it.
No, but every podcast is the same way. It's a political, it's an executive, it's a leadership, it's a conscious this, it's that, it's that. Everything that everyone speaks about is absolutely 100%. It could be the Republican, it could be the clinician, everything. Mm-hmm. These things that you're talking about, how hard it is, and how we've pigeonholed HR, and the crossing the I's, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, all of these things. Everything that you could talk about, anything that anyone's talked about in this podcast, is the leaf of a tree, and they mean something. Does the tree grow by watering the leaves? No, it's grown by watering the root. Everything is consciousness. Just taking everyone just one step deeper to understand where everything is birthed, to help them understand that, expand their awareness. I know this doesn't seem like it syncs up, but when we expand the awareness of everyone inside the company, no matter what the issues are, including the issues you just said, everyone expands awareness. Everyone gains a little bit clarity. Everyone goes from, let's say, 3rd to 4th grade. That shift at that metaphorical level will make it just subtly a little bit better for HR. Subtly, a little bit less division and conflict between HR and employees, or executives and employees, or bosses and employees. That CEO, that CMO, that customer service, that operations, that manufacturing person, this takes 8 billion people and subtly shifts their clarity. That's all we can ask for, because everyone in every podcast comes to me with different angles, different issues in different ways for different industries, for different people. It's all leaves of a tree. We have focused on the leaves of a tree since the beginning of humanity, and we all get siloed in to what we do, what our job is, and what are the issues inside that silo. The silo came from somewhere. If we pay attention to where the silo came from, we expand the silo, we expand the room the silo's in, and the problems we now have options to new solutions, new ways to look at the problem, new ways to help HR not be so pigeonholed.
Yeah, well, new ways to explain, because I'm thinking about this in terms of, when you get really big companies, we're talking major, like I'm thinking Procter and Gamble, worldwide companies like that. You also get major problems. The CFO was sleeping with someone, and now there's a lawsuit, and now there's all this stuff like that. Oh, now we're going to have this consciousness officer, and meanwhile, people are like, hey, this guy's involved in a major lawsuit, and the feds came and got him last week. We got bigger things, like we're not going to listen to this. How did we allow that to foster, right? So, but you're saying that when you get the full consciousness in, and you have the very top saying, yeah, that was bad. We're gonna need to make some changes because our consciousness is not where it needs to be.
Think about it this way. That's a great example. Okay. So they're going to, when that happens, they bring in some marketing firm, some PR firm, they bring in some hired gun to spin the narrative, right? Imagine having someone on staff in a small, medium, and large company that is not for the company or against it. That's the only thing we have not done.
That is really, that would be very hard to do. And how can you do that when someone's got to pay that bill and you've got a fiduciary responsibility to the person paying the bill?
That's the question that everyone's asked, and that's why we're so divided and conflicted. So let's bring in some neutrality. Okay. So anything you come at me for, you are correct. I'm not saying you're wrong. That's the unique thing about being neutral in this position. Every issue you're talking about, every time the CFO has a problem, every time a PR or a hired gun or a lobbyist is needed to kind of spin the narrative, humanity's bullshit meter is clearing up and it's through the roof, and they're sick of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. If we keep doing what we've been doing, that's the definition of insanity, because we're expecting different results, but we keep getting the same results and we keep creating that division. So this may be a disaster, Jennifer. This may be the worst idea of humanity's ever thought. Maybe I'm the devil. Truly, maybe I'm the devil. But we have never tried. We truly have never tried neutrality with these organizations, within capitalism, within business, within people. It's never been done. Let's just see, for the fact of we're kind of running out of options, what the hell happens when someone is on staff, sees the whole picture, and is not for you or against you, and can neutrally and very curiously look at everything going on from the good and the bad inside the corporation and saying, that's interesting. Have you thought of this? And knowing that when you say, have you thought of this, they're not trying to manipulate or sway you in any direction other than saying, it's open, it's neutral, you have expansion, you have access to all the answers. Let's see how you spin that. Let's see how it changes the perception of every individual inside the company on top of their clients. Let's just see. I
am so curious if this can be done, because
it'll be done.
I'm just very curious about it. Anyway, guys, we're already at the end. We've been talking to Charley Johnson. Charley, tell people how they can find you.
I assume in the video notes you'll put some of my contact. I'd love for them to cross my path on LinkedIn. So if you want to be this position, I can help there. If you're a company and want to hire it, I can help you with that as well. So call LinkedIn.
Okay. And guys, you heard it from Charley. We're going to be putting his LinkedIn right in the show notes, but also to go to superclinicproject.com. You can get to our free school. We keep all of our episodes there. And then we take the episodes and we create our own handouts that go with every single guest that we have. Sometimes we have a quiz, sometimes we have a worksheet, sometimes we just take this out. So you'll get extras and goodies just by going there. Plus you're going to get the link to go to Charley and yourself. So I want to just tell you, Charley, thank you so much for being here and expanding our consciousness and letting us think of a world where we could actually know neutral people, because that is just crazy, but it might crazy enough to work, right?
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks. Have a great one.
You too.
You've been listening to the Super Clinic Project podcast. If you like what you hear, subscribe and stay tuned for further episodes of the Super Clinic Project podcast.